Okay. Right. I think we're good. Okay. Right. So I want to cover a few things today. Primarily, I want to cover parameters, which you should be dealing with already. So you should have actually encountered some parameters to some extent, whether or not you know it or not. And then also I want to touch a little bit into partials because that should neaten it up. And then the public folder. So if you looked into Snarch, you may have already touched pretty much all of these. But I want to go into some detail. If you've got questions, fire away, and hopefully I can answer. It doesn't really matter where I start, but I guess I will start with parameters because it's the first one that I wrote. There are 3 types of parameters. Can anyone name them or any sort of like form that they might come in? So has anyone heard of query string parameters? Query string parameters? Okay, I'll go over each one. But first of all, I've got a Snarch application here. Don't pay attention to everything that's going on, but definitely sort of like you should be familiar with lines 1 to 7, and then the rest are sort of get methods and post methods and so on. But the first one is an index page. So hello, I'm use Shotgun. I'm not sure if you're using, but I quite like Shotgun. It doesn't play too well with sessions. So if whatever you're building is dependent on sessions, if you start using Shotgun, it might have a few issues. But for what I'm using it for, it just saves me from turning off the server. If I make changes, I can see them straight away without having to restart the server. So that's why I like to use Shotgun. But the moment you start using sessions, it's not that fun. AJ? Sorry?
Would you ever want them separated out? I mean, I was wondering whether the word Shotgun is part of
I'm not too sure, to be honest. Shotgun, someone saw a problem that they got annoyed with that, so they built a gem for it. So now, if you want to run a Snarch application, you do it through Ruby because it's a Ruby app. But there's various different ways. So Foreman's another way of running them. So Shotgun, I used it when it first started, and I've still got a little bit of a hangover from that. So, all right, so I've started up my server. It's on 9393. So ignore the pink. I will talk about that when I get onto sort of public and so on. But this is the page that is being shown to us. It just says hello, and there's a form. Has everyone encountered forms yet? Okay. So I've got these 2 input buttons, input fields, and a submit button. So if I were to press submit on here, we can assume it's going to do something. It's going to do something with this information inside here, just to have access to that. So parameters, in this case, we want to use to harness this kind of form to get information from this web page to the server, so we can actually start doing things with. So I've got these 2 forms. One is a name, so I'm going to Stephen. And one is a password, which is it's not actually a password field. It's just a text field. So I'm going to change that now. But let's have a look at something that's quite interesting. I'll talk about that when I go on to partials, but right now I'm just talking about parameters. So if I were to look at this index page, this index ERB, it just looks like this. But I'll explain that when I get onto partials. So it's loading up this thing called form. I look at form, and this is what that form looks like. We've got this username, and we've got this password. One has a name of username, the other one has a name of password, and they're both type text. So if I was to change this to type password and refresh this page, now when we type, it's all dotted out.
You can have an ERB file within an ERB.
Yeah, I'll explain more about that when I get onto partials, but it's quite a common thing to see. So right now, this is the form that we're looking at. On this form, so we can do more of HTML pages, but I'm sure you've all seen a form with battleships already, which you've been dealing with. So if you can generally not. And the names of the items in the form are really important. So this name is called username, and this name is called password. And when we have this submit, we're going to submit this contents here to this address using this particular method. So when we have that, we retrieve that on the post method. We have parameters with the names of what we call the names in here. And that's incredibly powerful. That means that we can have the data from a website into our Ruby code. You really don't understand, or not so much don't understand, Ruby's really fun when you're building applications, but to actually be able to get your code from a user into your Ruby code, to get information from a user using HTML, get that data to a server which is processing Ruby code is so powerful. So how am I handling that? Yeah. Yes, so there's part of the verbs. Who knows about verbs? So a little hand. Is everyone quite comfortable with verbs?
English grammar.
Sorry. Okay, HTTP. Okay, let's talk about that, 'cause that's incredibly important. So when you go onto the website and you press, you type something in the URL and you press enter, what you're actually doing is a GET request. And I can really mention this yesterday. So you do a GET request, just getting information from a source, from a URL, and it's getting all the information that's bringing it in. When you're on a form like this, you can do one of two things. You can either post that information or you can get information. By default, it will be a get, so it'll go and get data back when you submit that form. But really, we want to post the information. We want to say, here's the information. I'm not too sure how many verbs there are, but I'm going to see how many I can name. We have we have get and post. These are the two most common forms of verbs that you can get when it comes to getting and sending information using HTTP. Can anyone name any other ones? Put, yeah. And what else? What's the one that's like put? So, sorry. Patch. Any others? Delete. Yep. See. Sorry. But certainly the two you're going to deal with the most commonly are get and post, and the other ones that you're mostly going to be dealing with when we're playing with Sinatra. So I think we're going to have to maybe cover a little bit more about HTTP just to go into sort of like the intricacies of get and post. But I'm going to be dealing with the get and the post side of it. So when we create our Ruby, our Sinatra app, we do a get, and that goes and gets information, and we write a method for that. So here we're saying anything that's a get, this is just a method in Ruby, and the address is this, start doing this bit of information here, and here we're saying anything that's a post, you're making a handler for that on the side of Sinatra. So when we got this particular form, when you click the submit button, it's going to perform a post to this particular address. And if I didn't have this bit of code here, and I click this and I put in the name and password, you submit, we get this error which says Sinatra doesn't know this ditty. I'm sure you've seen this through playing around many times before, and it tells you pretty much what to put in there. It tells you how to create that post. It says you're trying to do a post to this address, but it doesn't exist. We're not handling that anymore until now. So I've created this post, and if I refresh this, actually, we go back. Actually, interestingly, if I did an enter here, now we haven't got a get because I'm trying to press enter. By default, the browser will always do a get when you press whatever you type here. Press enter. So I can't. There is no get for this URL that you've entered, but there is a get for this. So I'm going to inspect this, and we should see. All of this junk that you see here, I believe, is my auto-fill through LastPass. So I'll turn off LastPass. I don't have to turn off LastPass. I need LastPass. Okay, ignore all of this stuff here. That was all filled in by an extension that I've got. But it would look pretty much the same as what we saw before. And we've got the submit button, but you can see exactly what address it's going to. And if we go to network now, you can see that I did a get, which managed to get some bits of information here, which is actually the LastPass images. But I'm going to do a submit. Oh, let's ping it out every second. Submit. You can see that we've twisted this form. So I can click on there, and it's going to tell me all of the information about that particular post, all of those headers that Henry showed you yesterday. But here we should actually see the form data that we passed through, and we've got this user, hello, and we've got this password, 123456. That's all being sent over, and that's been sent over as form parameters. So inside the information that we're sending over, we're passing all of this information in. But us as Ruby developers, we want to be able to actually capture that information. We want to be able to do stuff with that. It's all really good that the browser's sending it over, but as developers, we actually want to have it, and we want to be able to play with it, and we want to be able to do stuff with it, so we can save it in databases or process it in any way we can. And this is how we do it. Oh.
It's faster because like we like open source, we like the hash trains transmitted those like yes,
no, none of that. It's just being sent through as key value pair. So what are our parameters? So right now I'm doing some processing parameters, but I'll if I get rid of that, if I just look at the terminal that I have, actually I've got a put parameters, and it's showing me all of the parameters that I'm putting through. So I've done that in the code here. I've done puts params. That's all my parameters. So if we have a look at the console, it's, as you can see, you might have seen this kind of format before. It's just a hash. It's a key value pair. So our parameters is just a key value pair of all of the information that we're sending through. So we have a user, hello, and password 123456. It's not encrypted in any way. It's just dotted out, so if someone was behind you, they couldn't see it. But that's pretty much the only security you have there. Yeah.
Does this mean that whenever you use params, you've got a hash?
Yes.
Possibly.
Yeah, so your parameters are a key value pair hash. All of those names that you've created in your form, if you look here in our form, all of those names have actually become the keys, and everything that you type inside those boxes have become the values, which is really, really powerful. So let's have a look at this, what we're doing with this. So we put in our parameters, and what I can do is I can save them to variables. So I can say @name equals params name, and password equals params. And have you noticed I've used the instance variable, the @ sign here? When you, I've noticed Mihai sort of like eyes, it's not an instance variable. When you're dealing with that in Sinatra, it's not an instance variable as we know them. So instance variable, we know are accessible everywhere. But we'll be using this in Sinatra to actually send it to our view. So anything that you put an @ sign in front of it, it's there, you can see it in the view that we're then sending it to here. So you're loading up this view called ERB params. Anything that's got an @ sign, any @ variables that we created, we can now see them in our view. So I've got this one called name, and this one called password. I'll click on that button. So if I do play 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we'll submit. We've got the name, which is hello, and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which has gone through here. Actually, I might not. I think the hello might be constant. So @name. Okay, I assume that's gone through okay. So I've got all that information, and I can now display it on the page. Have you seen this? You've been dealing with the syntax already. Does anyone know how the syntax works? It's quite funny if it hasn't really been explained to you. This is the ERB side of, sorry, the Ruby side of ERB. So ERB stands for Embedded Ruby, and this is the Ruby. So we can write as much HTML as we like in our page, and it all get rendered as HTML when it goes through to the browser. But with this magic syntax here, it's actually this syntax. So percentage. We can do Ruby code anywhere between here. So if I want to do an if statement, I can say if @name. Then maybe I would want to render the name. else. So is there anything that really jumps out to anyone that I've done there? Exactly. That was what I was hoping you'd realise. So if you're just doing Ruby code and you didn't really care, you don't want to see that Ruby code as a user, you don't have the equal sign. But if what it is that you're trying to actually render so the person can see it on a HTML page, then you do the equal sign. So the equals just says this is going to be viewable. You're going to render this so people can see it. Whereas the one without that is just invisible. That's the Ruby code behind the scenes. If you've got a Ruby code that no one's going to see, just do it without the equals, and equals says I'm going to render it and display it to the user. No, it's not. It's normally just a readability. I noticed that it starts a little bit horrible. But this will be a perfectly legitimate conditional statement that I've created. So if name, then render the name, else put no name given. So now if I go to the page again, in the form, then, oh, no name given. My fault. I don't know. I'm student. I'm 2.56. I actually think that I've done the name incorrect. I think the parameter. So yeah, I called it user rather than name. That's why it wasn't. So this is user. If I go back to the form, I'm going to do my username is Stephen. And do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the password for everything that I have. It's going to do that correctly. Whereas if I don't give a name, I go. Yeah. Actually, it'll still go for as an empty string. So it will be. So I have to say if name empty or name equals. Hidden here.
Is it possible to just store the input in instance variables and use those? Because I don't see the point.
How do you mean that's the point of using post?
So if we go back to server.id.
Yep.
And the third fourth block post.
This way here, yeah. Because I'm sending a post request, and I need to actually retrieve that post request. So if I didn't have this post, if I got rid of this, or got rid of any part of this line really, so if I made that a get, for example, instead of a post, now when I send that form, I can type in anything here, it's going to fail. It's going to error and say, you're sending out a post request, but you haven't got anything to retrieve that information, because it's actually, the form is sending it as a post request. The form is going off to this address /form, looking for, with the stamp of post, sending out that information, and it actually needs to have somewhere to handle that. It needs to sort of end up somewhere. If you put like a get, that'll be fine. You will have a slight difference here, and that will bring us on to our next parameter. So before I continue, is everyone sort of okay with those kind of parameters? You've got forms, anything that you've given the name to, so any name that you've given inside your form, once it's submitted, whether it be for a get or a post, you're going to have a parameter in a hash key value pair of user or password, and you'll be able to use that using the params and hash. Are people okay with that?
I just to understand, basically the direction of how the verbs work is the browser that asks with the verbs to the Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
So the post.
Exactly. Yeah. So the browser can be like, I'm doing a get request, I'm doing a post. Yes. So now I've done a get, and I'm actually handling that with a get. So everything should be good. Do you think everything will be fine? I love suspicion. I can't see why not. So I'm actually season and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do a submit. Everything's exactly the same. Can anyone spot the difference? I'm not too sure. It's got Stephen. I think I've written some bad logic, if I'm perfectly honest. Yes, so now we're doing a GET request. Everything that I've sent over is in the URL as well. So it's getting that information. It's saying, get this information, but it can only send it over the parameters this way. So now we have access to the password is now visible to the guy behind me, which might not be what you want. So if you're doing something like this with a form of secure information, you probably want to use a post. It just sends it off silently, browser to server, rather than using the URL to pass those bits of information. But that really does bring us on quite nicely to this kind of parameter. So I said it earlier on, but does anyone know the name of these kind of parameters? They're called query string parameters. So I've got an example here. So this one here, so if I go to form parameters? Yeah, form parameters. Wow. So, yeah. So I'm using a query string parameter here. The way you make query string parameters is you have this question mark. You can put these anywhere in your URL after the URL, and then you've got key value pairs. So I can do name equals Stephen. Then if I want to add anything else, I can do surname equals Lloyd. But what I'm doing here is I'm taking that parameters, I'm using the one that's called name. So I'm using the key name. So if I didn't have this name, and I'm trying to do something with that, but it's different in any way, I get this error saying I'm trying to do something with this parameter name, but I haven't got it. So although it's quite flexible, that users just come along, create any parameters they like, dates, I don't even know what date is today, 7, 11, 7, 1, whatever. We can send through all of this information, but we have to send through name because that's what my server's expecting. If you're going to use this kind of parameters, query string parameters, you have to be willing to not receive the information. There's a chance that the person might change that. So has anyone ever seen these parameters around before? If you probably get them on most websites you use. And it's quite a loose way to send information. One of the most popular way is affiliate tracking. So if you click on the link, it will have a query string parameter with like their special code in there. If you don't send the code, the website will work as normal. But if you do send the code, then something will get saved into somewhere that says if they buy something, this person's going to get a bunch of money. But you don't have to have that parameter for the website to work. So a really nice place that makes use of this, I say nice place, a place that I use a lot, is Expedia. So if I'm looking for a flight from London to, actually I was genuinely looking for this flight, then we've created all of this, we're searching for some prices, but look at this at the top here. It's quite an ugly URL, but we've got this trip equals round trip, leg 1 from London, whole airport, 2, actually that's the entire parameter there, it's still going on. And if I change anything here, maybe make that 18, that information gets sent through. So I can start playing with the parameters that are going through, but they're actually building everything up. And why do you think they'll do this? Why would they have them in the URL like this? Sorry? They didn't use post? No? Space time. It's actually so I can copy this URL, send it to my mum and say, hey, do you want to do this? So you can this URL is important. But if I make a date that doesn't exist anymore, so if I want to leave, wow, this is actually impossible to read now. At some point in 2014, it's not going to blow up and it's going to say, yeah, the date's wrong, enter a new date. So they know how to handle that. They know that the website's not going to work. But if everything was correct, everything was still in date, I'll pass this to my mum and mum will be like, okay, yeah, that's good for the slides. Or something like that. It's just to keep a nice way to keep track of that URL and pass that information to the server or to Expedia in this case, so they can start looking through their flight list and see if there's anything they can help you with. And that's this kind of parameters. So these are query string parameters. They're great to pass information around, but certainly whatever's getting that information, it shouldn't be dependent on that information. So because the user has got the power just to change that and get rid of it, and they can do that as much as they want. Whereas with a form, when they submit that button, they actually have to do quite a lot of work to make sure that parameter is not there. So they have to just mess around with the DOM slightly.
Sorry, that's you said that should be dependent on the user to make it work.
So it should be dependent on the parameters. So if you're going to use this kind of parameter, the get the handler here hasn't got a way to enforce that it's going to get those parameters. It might be using them for that reason, and it might break if it doesn't get them. So right now, if I go to my example, go to what's up? I've got this name, Stephen, and it's making use of that thing and do what's up plus this parameter name. And it's got that and it's fine. It says what's up, Stephen, it's happy with that information. But if I get rid of this name and call it first name, it no longer has that parameter called name, and it's going to break. It's like, I'm trying to do something with the parameter name, but I haven't got it, which is bad. So you shouldn't really use, whatever your site is doing, it shouldn't be dependent on having that parameter. So if it hasn't got it, it needs to know how to handle that and say, please enter a new name or something along those lines. Yeah, so I could do if Params. And now it's not going to render anything, but it's not broken. So you should always try to handle that. And that query string parameters, they're great for passing on the information. They're great for having the information in the URL, so you can give it to people that URL now see that page, but definitely don't have that particular parameters be in charge of what that person sees. So then we go on to the last type of parameters. And these parameters are URL structured parameters. And what we can do here is I can say hello /Stephen /Lloyd. And what does this look like to us? Do these look like parameters in any way? It just looks like a normal URL. It's just a normal URL that you'll see and you can pass that around. But actually, on the handler on this side, I've used this special colon here between each one. And I've said whatever you put in this place is going to be a parameter called name. And whatever you put in this place is going to be a parameter called surname. So now I've got these two parameters made out of the URL structure. So if I was trying to go to just this, it didn't exist. There is nothing called hello Steve. There's only something called hello something, so I can put anything in here, /something. Doesn't matter what those two somethings are, they could be anything, but it's going to turn them into parameters. And this is really powerful. This gives you a really nice looking URL, and you're getting information out of that URL. It has to look like this for it to land on this particular handler. It has to look exactly like that, but I've said whatever's in that place is going to be a parameter now. And a really, really great place, and it's really similar to Expedia, but it's called Kayak. And they really make use of this in a really popular way. Here's another flight I was looking at. I have a really weird fantasies about where I want to go. But they've got that exact information here. They've got these flights. They've got the code for Fort Lauderdale, Lima, and then passing in the dates. And I can change these dates again, speed 20 seconds, and so on. And it will change them, and it'll update. And again, I've got that same benefit where I can copy this and I can send that to my mum, I can check that information. And if I get rid of one of them, it's going to get a little bit confused, doesn't really know when I'm returning. Actually, in this case, it just assumes that it's a single flight, which is pretty cool. If I have a second date, then it will assume that it's a return flight and it's returning. If I give it some bit of gobbledygook here.
It really saves you from having to keep going back and back and back.
Yeah. So Invisible Hands, we used to scrape information from this. If people went onto a page, we would look for all the different sites to try and get, well actually we'd actually copy the URL and try and find the flight information that they were looking for, and then look on our servers for it. So whatever URL they've got, we'll just get that bit of information and process it and say, here's in a little bar will come down, so it's a cheap flight on this website. So this was really great for me. I love this, because it's like, it's done my job for me. Just by them going to a page, I can see all the information they want to see, and I can get other information that might be of use to them. So yeah, they've chosen, and it's just a design choice for them. They've chosen to do it this way. And maybe if I do a third destination, NYC, it might think I'm doing a multi-city. No, I think it just ignores it, which is great. But if maybe if I put another date in there, 28. It kind of knows what I'm doing. It knows I want to do multi-city airport, but I've done things quite bad, so it's not overly happy with what I'm doing. But you can really play with these. So these kind of parameters, they're really great when they say this is what the URL has to look like, and if it doesn't look like this, it's not even going to end up at this endpoint here. But I can really make use of that information and start processing things in a way that's useful for me. So that's your 3 types of parameters. Does anyone have any questions about these? Because you're going to be dealing with them. These two, you're going to be choosing what's the best way for your application. Forms, you can't say you're going to be using them everywhere. Yeah.
On the form one where you've got the parameters and you say them without a variable, how long do where do those variables exist and where do they disappear within the code here? What scope are they?
Just here. So the parameters are only available
So
here.
only in that get do end piece.
Yeah. That's the same for everything I've said. So wherever you're retrieving that information, so this is your get method or your post method, whatever method is receiving it, your params, you can do put parameters, you can investigate those parameters, you can save them into the database, but that's your shot at dealing with them. Once you redirect off, yeah, so if I was to do a redirect, the next redirect, so if I do redirect to somewhere else, that redirect won't happen. It's not saved anywhere else. Any questions? Do we feel comfortable about parameters? Okay, so let's talk a little bit, because it's not too complicated to talk about partials. Oh yes, Sandra. Do you have any insight on that?
How do you use a slash?
Like for instance, get slash form slash.
Oh, like a wildcard asterisk.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've seen that done. And I'm not sure what to do.
sort of, it's a placeholder for anything that you use.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, I mean,
We use those like in like on pre-calls, for instance, that you guys all did. In that software, we use splat parameters as a placeholder actually for GitHub pages, for instance. So you could put in your you can put anything in that splat. We just then take that as a parameter. So it's kind of exactly that. It's a placeholder for anything.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have, initially we're going to our index, and I'm using my special ERB syntax to actually write some Ruby code to load up another file, to load up a form. It's this information here. And this is called a partial, and you'll see this everywhere. So when you're writing your HTML, this can get huge. Right now it's not huge at all, but it can get quite big. If you look at any Amazon page, I'm going to choose Amazon, and try and find a small one. This isn't that big. So how many lines of source HTML is going to be here? Does anyone want to guess?
600.
600. Anyone else? 1,000. 1 million. I would say you're probably closest so far. 30. I would hazard a guess. If a view page source, I think there's going to be something like 20,000. Maybe that's a bit too much. Do you think is that too huge? 10,000? 8,000? Who knows? So okay, so I've got it set to quite. Yeah. Oh, this is more fun though, right? You've got a feeling of.
there's CSS in there as well.
But it's not all their CSS. They've got some CSS in there. They've got some JavaScript in there. It's not all their CSS. There we are. So 5,500 just for that. It's, you know, there's a lot going on there. So you imagine, like, if you wanted to create a page similar to that. I mean, we're not as good as Amazon, so we might end up with like 2,000 lines of HTML code to create this. No, it would be just. There's lots of boat-related stuff and computer-related stuff. Sums up my life. But it's all sort of coming in. It's all personalised to me, and they've got sort of codes go off and dynamically do that. There's actually more information, so than what's being displayed. Maybe I can scroll somewhere and see. No, I can't actually. But there's loads of things going on there behind the scenes, and everything here is sort of handling that in a beautiful way, which it's an absolute mess actually, I'm sure, even though probably admit that it's a mess, but it's definitely part of their site. So, but it can get really out of hand. So if we're looking at our code, which is here, I could, it's not as big, but I guarantee you, no developer in Amazon has like a 5,000 line HTML that they have to confront every single day. I said, can you make this footer like blue? And they're like, okay, scroll, and try and find that bit. They won't have to. And they'll be heavily dependent on sort of partials, bits of information, putting that in there. So you might have a partial called the footer partial, and that'll get all the information for the footer. You might have one called the title partial. You might have one called the body, or sort of like the mid body. And it just lets you, on that page, sort of like isolate everything in a certain way. So you can maybe have at the top a title or something else. Forms, I might be using that all over my website for various different reasons. I can then create just a really clean form. All that's doing is form, and I can send it into my application just by using the syntax here, and it will just exist there. It will get rendered into the HTML page.
You then reuse it.
Reuse it over and over again. So this is a really powerful way just to keep reusing those code, bits of code, and just put them in there and just not really overbloat and duplicate, because even in HTML we want to be as dry as we possibly can. So you never want to repeat yourself. If you see the chance that you're going to repeat yourself, if you write the same form twice or something similar, then you probably need to extract it into its own little form like that, and then you can just render it inside there, and it won't have any problem with that. So, I'm not sure if you're going to say something. So, forms and partials, partials are incredibly important just to sort of let you deal with exactly what you're going to be working with inside your ELB file. There was something else I was going to say. It might come back to me in a second. But I'm going to talk about public. Sorry? What way? Okay, no. It was something to do with partials, but I don't remember. Public. So notice that my page is pink when I get there. So if I go to my page, here we are. I go to my local host, 9,000. The home page is pink, and anything that I put on here is, and actually, I talking about layout. So, most websites you go to have a certain look and feel that's consistent above all of them. It might have a footer, and it might have a header at the top. These two bits of information. You store that information in your layout. So, if we go to our code, you'll notice that I've actually got the words here, hello, on pretty much every page that we go to, with an exception of some. But if I create any page that's going to a view, we're always going to have that pink color and that lovely, that sun pink and the hello, welcome. But where is that being stored? So if we look here, this is my layout. So if we inspect the page, view page source, this is what my HTML looks like. But nowhere have you seen me write that. So we've got the form, we've got this hello in the H1, that's body, and we've got these styles being imported in. All of that is going through my layout. And this is where Sinatra helps us out a little bit. Sinatra doesn't do too much. It does quite a lot, but most of it we have to program ourselves. But Sinatra does one little thing for you, is it does this by default for you automatically. So if you create a layout.erb, every single page you have is going to inherit from that. So in this page, I've got my hello. I can type whatever I want here, and the yield bit, this is the most important part of the layout. So notice again, we've got that Ruby, we're rendering it. This is the original page it was trying to go to. So if we look at our index page, our server, when I'm going to the home page, I'm going to index, which is loading up a form, and we haven't got hello, we haven't got any of that information. But whatever page I was trying to go to, we'll go to hello first, I would go to layout first, load all of that information, and wherever I've written yield in the layout, that information will be displayed there. And that's where I'm going to. This is the index ERB, which in turn is the form ERB.
I mean, how do you get rid of that? Is there a way?
I can just delete it.
No, it's in one page.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. So you can, is it layout false? Layout.
Sounds about right.
So let's create a new page, which is going to pick up on this layout. So I'm going to create a new page in my index, in my server. Slash carrots. So I haven't done that for a while. And I think that'll do. Not much is going to go on. So now if I go localhost slash, why is that not loading up my layout? Oh, I need to go to an ERB. So ERB carrots, and I'm going to create new file. Copy. I go here, I've got my hello, the extra H. So yeah, it's loading in. So it's trying to go to this carrot page, it's doing everything inside that it's supposed to, but beforehand it goes to the layout, gets that information, but we don't want that anymore. Right now, this page is just a very standard page that we don't want to mess around with. So I believe it's layout false, but I might be incorrect. So when we send this here, yeah, so we just pass through layout false. Alternatively, if we had a different layout, we could write the name of that layout as an ERB file. So layout, I don't use carrot anymore. Can anyone think of something orange? Oh, sorry. I don't know if it goes through as a symbol. I'm gonna yeah, layout's default. So what's the key value? Takes it as, how cool is it? Oh, that's the question. Never pay attention to the question. So layout is the symbol, and the value is the one that we're going for. That's just, I shouldn't have an issue with that. Imagine that's true. But yeah, who knew? Now we know. So that'll be how you do a different layout. So if you wanted multiple layouts, you'll do that. But generally, your layout is the look and feel that you would have. Maybe you want to override that and have different styling. So yeah, you can do that. And you can change the layout. But the layout is always, by default, going to go to layout first. And then in between the yields with the equals, the number one problem people have is they forget the equals. If you don't have equals, it won't do what it was originally going to do. It won't have the code that was actually in the original layout. But it will load up all of this first, anything you put there. So you can put all of your HTML docs. So inside your bit of code here, all you have to do is worry about the body. All you have to do is worry about the information that you want the person to see. Everything else will get done for you. So it's like a really clever partial that does all of this just beforehand by default. Yes, so this is where I'm going to talk about public a little bit. So I realise I'm touching a whole bunch of Sinatra here. Like I'm going from all of that and a little bit more. So yeah, so if we look at our layout, which I've forgotten what it's called now, just a normal layout. Notice we're going to we're setting our CSS file in our style sheet styles.css, and we're setting our JavaScript from our JavaScript called jQuery. So I've got jQuery on the page, which is all fantastic. And if I want to use an image, I was just spelled incorrectly. I know that wasn't me actually. That was someone else's typo, because I think it's a picture of a capybara and a cat, which everyone's been using cucumber, which is part of capybara. So I thought I'd treat you all to that. So anything inside your public file, you can actually access. So we've got this JavaScript, which I want to be able to call here. We've got our styles, which I want to be able to access here, which is how I've got everything pink. I've got images, and inside this image, I can load up anything I like on the page. So does anyone know in HTML how you put an image? Source, SRC. What was the image? Yeah. So we create this image tag. Now ingress dot. Yes. Is it? It's not. Is it self-closing?
Yeah.
I think it'll still work. Right, how I did it. There we are. So we've got our image on the page. But anything that's inside your public folder, you can actually access. Is what I'm trying to illustrate by doing the same, whatever the default directory is and whatever the file name is. So if I go to /images /apg, you can go directly to those folders. So I can create a new folder here called new folder. Would anyone like me to give any name here? Just save me writing carrot or Bob or please. Banana, apple. Oh yes, I've created a directory called apple, and inside there we go images. It's called red apple. Find a red apple desktop. That's fine. Now if we take a look here, we should have a red apple inside there. So now I can go directly to that exact location. Go to apple. Apples. Oh no, off my own thing. I need to start. So. And you can save that there. So there's nothing magic going on. The public file, Sinatra, lets you have a public folder. You can set your own custom public folder. So you can say, actually, trust your Google again. So Sinatra public folder. So if you wanted to have you can set your public folder to whatever you want it to be. So that could be /bananas or whatever you want. So if you want to have a custom public folder by default, is it still default to have it as public, or do you have to set it explicitly now? Okay, so it's still that way. So by default, you automatically, if you call something public, anything in there will be accessible to anyone using this sort of structure. The conventions are images will be in images, JavaScript will be in JavaScript, style sheets will be in, I've seen it as both CSS, styles, and style sheets. I quite like style sheets. But try to name things.
Yes, the image. The image comes out and they click on it to actually go to the website. Are they going through the public folder?
I'm not too sure how they do it. Do you know how they might do it? It would be something like this.
Yeah, that's straight.
Yeah, so if you Google like Apple, for example, like what we just did, it will do a search for Apple, do its normal Google search for apples, and then it will go through and probably try to look for any .jpeg, .png that has the word Apple in its title, which means, so maybe with my Apple search, we might see something that's not an apple. Wow, this might take a while. Here we are. But there is an apple, but it might not be the exact apple that we want, or this one, for example, bobbing for apples. Normally it would be close, but actually it's because the image itself has the word apple inside it. That's how they managed to get that back. So every single one of these images should have the word apple inside it, apple art, and so on, to be called apple. So there'll be something a bit clever. And this is fantastic that they're doing this. They're searching for every page. Then every single page itself, it's been searched for to try and find any .jpg sources, and then rendering that and then loading that up just so we see it looking like this. So again, that was another whistleblower tool to parameters. I think we're approaching an hour. So it's parameters, partials, public, and we touched on verbs a little bit. So I think there's quite a bit of information going in there.
Does it all make sense?
It was just very fast. But you're not going to get too far into Sinatra without playing with any of this. So we've got the video to refer to. But does anyone have any questions or any confusing parts that I've gone a bit too fast over? Do we understand partials?
Can I ask something about?
Yes.
If you haven't made that file with the default template,
The layout.
file,
Yep.
is there some sort of default layout that will happen?
Nothing will get loaded. Nothing extra will get loaded. So the original page will get loaded, but everything else will just be white space and blank. So it will only have what you're sending it to.
Okay.
So it'll try to look for a layout. If there's no layout, it won't load up a layout, and it'll carry on doing loading up the page. Yeah. So the moment you add a layout, it will know to load it automatically for you. But if you don't load a layout, it will just carry on loading what it was trying to go to originally.
Okay.
So if I delete one.
In Sam's lecture, he made a PRV file. Was it PRV file? No, it was just in Sinatra. He wrote some HTML. He didn't have the HTML tags and the voice tags or anything. And when we looked for the source in the browser, it had those.
That's the browser adding that. So that would be either Chrome or Firefox. They know that most pages have that, and they're quite kind to give it to you. But in reality, the only thing, if you were to do a a get or did it in a console, you wouldn't get any of those HTML tags back. That's just Chrome being kind.
Do you remember when we looked at the Chrome and the network thing, when it actually showed the response, it was just text. It was only the source that had that. Okay.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, I think we'll stop there. But I appreciate it. Probably it's quite overwhelming with information. So any questions, feel free to ask. Go back over the video, or just have a play. You'll be touching everything that we've done over next week. Thank you.